Good afternoon, Sunday afternoon here in the Philippines. I'd like to gather my thoughts and I suppose make a little bit like a video diary of my thoughts at this moment in time. I think we all agree that relationships can be difficult. They can also be a delight. They can be a loving or a love-hate relationship. But somehow they seem to provide individually for many of us a feeling of connection to another human being. And as we get older, I'm 77, it doesn't get any easier. I'm not using my age as a reason to justify my thoughts, but as we get older, we have different focuses in life. We have different thinking processes that maybe in other circumstances when we were younger, we would be less deep thinking about them. But the one thing in 10 years of living in the Philippines, I've realized that most Filipinos operate on emotion. Now, for us in the West, where we're more probably, apart from love and lust, we tend to generalize everything in a more mechanical way. Can we afford this? Is this going to be a benefit to us? All these things come in to play, even within a relationship. We plan to buy a house or build a home. Can we afford it? Or are we being a little bit extreme? Here in the Philippines, of course, many of you find yourself in relationships with Filipina. And I'd like to think that most of you out there succeed in some shape or form a reasonably contented relationship. That's not to say that there aren't bumpy roads ahead or in the past, but nevertheless they're often difficult for us as foreigners, ones that have not been brought up in the cultural niceties of being born in the Philippines. You know, quite often you can say things to people and they'll take completely the opposite way of thinking. And it's only when the actions of that person start to play out that we realize that they didn't get the message at all. You know, many of you will realize that I had a relationship here in the Philippines. Or should I say, I have a relationship in the Philippines. But it went sour. It was nobody's particular fault. Well, let's put it that way, that I don't want to attach blame to either the woman or myself, because it takes two to tango. But for a man to deal with certain issues in love stakes, it can be a difficult path because many relationships here, many friendships here involve all kinds of walks of life, just as they do overseas. You can have gay friends, you can have blind friends, you can have racially different friends. All of these add to the flavor and delight of a relationship. No one's going to say a relationship is only formed on two of the same kind. And there lies a bit of a problem in the sense that we as a foreigner choose to come here, ostensibly, I think, for financial reasons, and also in the love stakes as well. And doing so, we often open up a Pandora's box. You know, we make commitments to people over the years and we try and follow through. We try and do our best. That's all we can do, both of us. And when things go sour, it often leaves one very bitter, maybe both. But it also can leave, in my case, a feeling of guilt in the sense that many of you will probably say, oh, it's denial. No, no, it's not denial. And I'm not denying the denial. But in my case, I brought up two beautiful Filipina girls as if they were my own. And just because their parent has no longer seen fit to try and understand maybe my side of the story, my feelings about different things, it's easy for many Filipinos to try and use the emotional blackmail in a way because we always know that we're going to be in the wrong because we're foreigners. We don't understand. It's true, we don't. But we also are not stupid. We understand that things like, oh, if you if you leave me, I'm going to do this to myself or that. That's just emotional blackmail. And you don't even have to be a Filipino to find that. That's everywhere in the world. But here it means more because it's a weapon that it's often a weapon of choice. It's a weapon to bring out the emotional fireworks, so to speak, not to focus on the reality of what one is trying to achieve. You know, you can have Christmas, birthdays, graduations, debuts. All of these things can happen in your life with your Filipina. And therefore, when you plan your life, you plan also for those events in the sense that you look forward to the moment when the first grandchild is born, or she reaches 18, or maybe she passes her exams at college. You look forward to graduation. You know that maybe in your case, you were there when maybe their father wasn't. And you've taken on a role of being that rock, I suppose. And you maintain that closeness even after separation with the children. As difficult as it might be, in the West you do the same. Sometimes the children go the mother's way, sometimes they stay true to the father. Not ostensibly choosing different camps, but showing that you're both equal. Mum might be a raving lunatic, Dad might be a crazy man, but either way you still love them. And there lies the dilemma, because you want to show your support. You want to continue to be in their lives. But sometimes that's just an impossible task. And I say sometimes because many things are at play here. You know, we've talked about tempo, we've talked about jealousy, we've talked about envy. And many of those things may well be involved when you move on, either of you. Maybe she'll find another foreigner to step into your shoes or into the shoes that she wants to have around her. But maybe she also might decide that she's had enough of that kind and she might decide that she wants something different. That's her choice. And as my mother used to say, you've made your bed, you now have to lie in it. But we live in a world where communication is so easy. It's easy to leave the door open, leave the avenues of discussion open. Many times, just to try and understand why it went bad. And when you do try and reach out and have a good and meaningful conversation, often you're met with a wall of silence or a wall of anger. And that does nothing to alleviate the pain and suffering of either party. But it is extremely hard in the Philippines because, as you also know, it's extremely difficult to have an all out emotional and open discussion with your partner. You might think you're having one, but quite often you'll find that it's falling completely off the target. And things just go from bad to worse because nothing is understood. I mean, when somebody says to you, right, okay, if you want to leave, go. How many times have you heard that said to you? I'd love $1 for each time it's said to me. That doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It just means that sometimes people frustrate each other. Sometimes we push we push the boundaries too far. We create a situation where a rational person said enough is enough. It's not going to work. There's no going back. And that's the saddest part about life, really, is that living with the what ifs. What if I went here? Or what if I went there? What if things were different? Would they really have worked out? Statistics around the world is that relationships that falter, 99% of them are over. They may have a slow, painful death, but some may have an organized order about them where the two parties can sit down and sort out the onward marching of each other without suggesting, oh, you'd rather be with her or you'd rather be with him. I can understand many of the issues that confront all of us, but they are particularly and singularly attached to each other. They're individual. What works for you doesn't necessarily work for me. What upsets me maybe doesn't upset you. But when you throw a foreign culture into the mix, and then you add age as well, so many fears, so many insecurities start to pop up. And sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and just say, sorry, it's not going to work anymore. No more emotional tugging. And we ourselves are susceptible of creating the climate, the mood for all of those things to happen anyway. It's not always the woman's point of view. We try and do what we think is right. We do our best to indicate that that is what we want. But sometimes wishing and hoping are two different things. They don't always come together with a happy ending. And I just think that everybody needs to realize that it can be extremely difficult for many expats who come here, who believe that they've found the one, and over time discover that they've opened up a hornet's nest, something that they never thought would happen. Throwing in the mix, of course, is the financial loss to the husband being a foreigner, and most of us are men, because it is a hard pill to swallow when you've given so much of your past history to another person. You've given virtually all of your lifelong savings, building a future, a legacy that you believe will be there when you pass on. Sometimes going back is also a shock, discovering that what you thought was your pride and joy looks a bit tatty and neglected. But they do their best to maintain it. But with limited resources, that's going to be a hard, uh, hard field to plough. And as much as we listen to other people, we still have to walk in our own shoes, and we have to be sure that we're being true to ourselves, as well as those whom we used to love and those that remain in our hearts.